There is a moment, a single defining moment, when the distance between who you are and who you're meant to be collapses into one choice. Do it now. Every single day, millions of people wake up with brilliant ideas, burning ambitions, and genuine dreams, and every single night, most of them go to bed having done absolutely nothing about it. Not because they lacked talent, not because the odds were against them, but because they waited. They waited for the perfect moment. They waited to feel ready. They waited for someone to hand them permission. And while they waited, life moved on without them. Here's the truth nobody tells you. The perfect moment is a myth. Readiness is earned through action, not granted before it. And the only permission you will ever need is the one you give yourself. So today, right here, right now, we talk about what it truly means to get it done. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Not when you feel more confident. Now. Think about the last time you had a great idea. Not a small one, a real one. The kind that made your pulse quicken, the kind that felt like it could genuinely change something about your life. Now ask yourself honestly, what did you do with it? Chances are, you thought about it. You turned it over in your mind, examined it from every angle, told yourself you'd act on it soon. And then, slowly, quietly, without even noticing, you let it slip. Not because it wasn't good enough, but because you waited too long to move. Waiting feels safe. It disguises itself as preparation, as wisdom, as patience. But most of the time, waiting is just fear wearing a respectable coat. We tell ourselves we're not ready, and that feels reasonable, even responsible. But readiness is not a destination you arrive at before you begin. It is something you build as you go. The carpenter does not become skilled by reading about wood. The swimmer does not learn by standing at the edge of the pool. You become ready by doing, by stumbling, by getting back up and doing again. Here is what science and every successful person throughout history have confirmed. Action is the antidote to anxiety. When you sit still inside your fear, it grows. It fills the room. It crowds out your confidence and replaces it with doubt. But the moment you take even the smallest step forward, make the call, write the first line, open the door, something shifts. The fear doesn't vanish, but it shrinks to a manageable size. Your brain receives a signal that you are in motion, and motion produces momentum. And momentum, once ignited, is a remarkably powerful thing. The first step does not need to be perfect. Let that land for a moment, because it runs against everything we have been taught. We are raised in a culture that celebrates the polished result and hides the messy beginning. We see the finished painting, never the 20 failed sketches beneath it. We hear the flawless speech, never the 100 stumbling rehearsals that came before it. So we hold ourselves to a standard that even our heroes never met when they started. We demand perfection at the starting line, and then wonder why we never leave it. What you need is not a perfect plan. What you need is a decision, a committed, unshakable decision to move. Start badly if you have to. Start uncertainly, start quietly, start alone. But start. Because every great thing that has ever been built in this world began with someone who chose action over hesitation at the exact moment when hesitation felt most justified. That person was not special. They were not free of fear. They simply refused to let fear make the decision for them. So the question is no longer whether you have what it takes. The question is whether you are willing to stop managing your potential and start releasing it. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not as wide as it looks, but it will only ever close through movement. And as you begin to move, as you begin to feel the weight of forward motion, you will quickly discover something that no amount of waiting could ever teach you, that the hardest part was never the journey itself. It was only ever the beginning. But here is the thing about beginning. It still requires something more than just showing up. It requires you to keep showing up, even when the initial rush of momentum fades, even when the days get harder and the results get slower, even when a voice inside you suggests it might be easier to stop. That voice, the one that tells you to stop, to rest, to try again tomorrow, is not your enemy. It is simply your feelings talking. And your feelings, as real and as valid as they are, were never designed to run your life. They were designed to inform it. The moment you hand the steering wheel over to how you feel on any given morning, you have already surrendered the most important battle of self-mastery there is. Because feelings change with the weather. They shift with your sleep, with your hunger, with a single discouraging word from someone you barely know. And if your progress depends on them, your progress will be just as unstable. This is the great lie that motivation sells us. It arrives like a wave, powerful, electric, irresistible, and in that surge we make promises to ourselves. We write the plan, we buy the shoes, we set the alarm for 5 in the morning with absolute certainty that tomorrow will be different. And sometimes it is. For a day, maybe 3, maybe a week if we are lucky. But then the wave recedes, as all waves do, and we are left standing on the same shore we started from, wondering what went wrong. Nothing went wrong. We simply mistook a feeling for a foundation. Discipline is something else entirely. It is not loud. It does not arrive with a surge of energy or a playlist that makes you feel invincible. Discipline is quiet, and it is stubborn, and it shows up in the gray ordinary moments that nobody ever films or posts about. It is the writer who sits at the desk when the words refuse to come. It is the athlete who runs the extra mile on the morning their body is asking to stay in bed. It is the entrepreneur who makes the 10th call after 9 rejections, not because they feel like it, but because they decided, before the feelings had a chance to weigh in, that this was what they were going to do. The people who consistently get things done are not more talented than you. They are not luckier, they are not wired differently. They have not found some secret well of energy that the rest of us lack. What they have done is made a prior decision, a decision that precedes the alarm clock, precedes the mood, precedes the inconvenience of the day. They have decided, in advance and without condition, that they will show up. Not when inspired. Not when circumstances cooperate. Simply, they will show up. And that decision, repeated daily, quietly reshapes everything. Because here is what discipline does that motivation never can. It compounds. Every time you honor the commitment you made to yourself, even when every part of you wanted to break it, you deposit something into your own sense of self-worth. You become, in your own eyes, someone who does what they say. And that identity, I am someone who follows through, becomes the most powerful force in your life. It stops being about willpower. It becomes simply about who you are. You do not negotiate with the alarm clock because you are not the kind of person who does that anymore. So build your systems. Build your routines. Make the decision once, and then let the structure carry you through every day when the decision would otherwise be too hard to remake. But as you build that discipline, as you strengthen that daily resolve, you will eventually come face to face with something that no system can fully prepare you for. A moment when the obstacle is not internal, when the friction does not come from laziness or low energy, but from the outside world pushing back with something that feels an awful lot like a legitimate reason to quit. And that is when you will need to look that obstacle squarely in the eye and decide what you are truly willing to own. We are all, every single one of us, extraordinarily gifted storytellers. Not in the way we wish we were, not in the way that fills rooms and moves audiences, but in a far more private and far more damaging way. We are gifted at constructing the narratives that explain why we could not, why we did not, why the timing was wrong, why the people around us failed us, why the world dealt us a hand that made success unreasonably difficult. These stories are detailed. They are coherent. They are often, in part, completely true. And that is precisely what makes them so dangerous. An excuse does not need to be a lie to destroy you. That is the part nobody warns you about. You can have a perfectly valid reason for falling short. A difficult upbringing, a broken system, a betrayal, an illness, a series of genuinely unfair circumstances, and still allow that reason to become the ceiling of your life. The obstacle was real. The pain was real. But the moment you let it become your permanent explanation, you have handed it a power it was never supposed to have. You have turned a chapter into the whole story. And stories, once told enough times, start to feel like facts. Owning your excuses does not mean pretending they do not exist. It means looking at them with clear, unflinching eyes and calling them what they are, explanations, not verdicts. It means standing in front of the mirror and saying, yes, this happened to me, yes, it was hard, yes, it was unfair, and I am still responsible for what happens next. That is not a small thing to ask of yourself. In fact, it may be the hardest thing this speech asks of you today. Because accountability without self-compassion becomes self-punishment, and that helps no one. But accountability with honesty, that is the beginning of real power. Look at the people who have risen from the most devastating of circumstances, not the ones who had every advantage, but the ones who had almost none. What separates them is not that they had no excuses. They had plenty. Better excuses than most of us will ever have. What separates them is that at some critical point, they made a decision that the excuse, however justified, was not going to travel with them into the future. They acknowledged the wound and refused to let it write the ending. They chose, deliberately, and with full knowledge of how unfair it felt, to take ownership of the only thing they could, their next move. This is what it means to burn your excuses. Not to erase what happened. Not to pretend the road was easier than it was. But to stop letting the past vote on the future. Every morning you wake up, you are handed a choice. Carry yesterday's reasons forward, or set them down and move. The excuses will always be there if you want them. They are patient, they are comfortable, and they will wait for you indefinitely. But your potential has a shorter window. Your time is not infinite. And every day spent maintaining the story of why you cannot is a day stolen from the life of someone who absolutely can. So make the choice. Acknowledge what held you back, honor the difficulty of it, and then, deliberately, consciously, with everything you have, choose progress over the comfort of your explanation. Not once, but every time the old story resurfaces, which it will. Because ownership is not a single dramatic declaration. It is a daily practice, a quiet insistence on agency in the face of everything that tells you agency is not yours to have. And as you practice that, as you begin to feel the ground firm beneath your feet again, you will be ready to face something that ownership alone cannot fully protect you from. The moment when you do everything right, when you show up with discipline, when you silence every excuse, and things still do not go the way you planned, it will happen. No matter how disciplined you are, no matter how thoroughly you have silenced your excuses and committed yourself to forward motion, there will be a moment, perhaps many moments, when you fall short. The project collapses. The launch fails. The relationship you invested in breaks apart. The goal you worked toward for months slips through your fingers at the last possible second. And in that moment, every instinct you have will try to interpret that outcome as a verdict on your worth, your intelligence, your right to keep trying. That instinct is wrong. It is loud, and it is convincing, and it is completely wrong. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is, without exception, part of the path toward it. Every scientist understands this. An experiment that produces an unexpected result is not a wasted experiment. It is information. It tells you something the theory did not predict, and that gap between prediction and reality is precisely where the most important discoveries live. The greatest breakthroughs in human history were not born from uninterrupted success. They were born from people who failed, recorded what they learned, adjusted their approach, and tried again with better knowledge than they had before. The failure was never the problem. Stopping was the only problem that ever mattered. What distinguishes the people who ultimately get things done is not the absence of failure in their story. It is the speed and quality of their response to it. They do not linger in the wreckage longer than necessary. They grieve it briefly, because grief is honest and pretending not to feel a loss is its own kind of weakness. But then, they sit down and they ask the only question that matters in that moment. What does this tell me? Not why did this happen to me, not who is to blame, not whether I should have tried at all, but what, specifically, can I extract from this experience that makes my next attempt more intelligent than my last? That question transforms defeat into direction. So the next time something does not work, and there will be a next time, resist the pull towards shame. Shame is a dead end. It looks inward and finds fault, and it stops there, satisfied with the verdict. Instead, look outward and forward. Look at what the failure is pointing to, what it is asking you to reconsider, what it is preparing you for that success in that moment could never have taught you. Because every setback, properly examined, is a refinement. It is life editing your approach on your behalf, tightening the story, cutting what was never going to work anyway. And as you begin to see failure through that lens, as the fear of it slowly loses its grip on you, you will find yourself capable of something far greater than simply recovering from a fall. You will find yourself thinking beyond the present moment entirely, reaching towards something that outlasts the struggle, something that asks not just who you are today, but who you are becoming and what mark you intend to leave behind. Somewhere ahead of you, living in the days and years you have not yet reached, is a version of you that is the sum total of every choice you make from this moment forward. That person is not a fantasy. They are a consequence. They are being built right now, quietly and without ceremony, by the decisions you make when no one is watching, by the promises you keep to yourself in private, by the mornings you rise when everything in you begs to stay still. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, ownership over excuses, courage over the fear of failing, you are sending something forward in time, a stronger foundation, a clearer identity, a life that was earned rather than waited for. That future self is watching you right now, in this very moment, with either gratitude or regret, and which one it is depends entirely on what you decide to do next. Not next year, not next Monday, not after the circumstances improve or the timing feels right. Now. Because legacy is not built in the grand, televised moments of triumph. It is assembled in the 1,000 invisible moments where you had every reason to stop and chose to continue instead. It is built in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the deeply unglamorous daily act of showing up for the life you said you wanted. So start. Move. Own every obstacle, extract every lesson, and keep your eyes fixed not just on what you are doing but on who you are becoming in the doing of it. The world does not need another person waiting for permission to be great. It needs you, fully committed, fully present, fully alive to the possibility that everything you have been through is preparation, not punishment. You have the start, you have the discipline, you have the honesty, you have the resilience. Now go and get it done.